Brought to you by the Cool Fat Burner, the world's first brown fat weight loss device.
Hi everyone, it's Eric, and once again the Cool Fat Burner is about to make scientific history. We're at Hagerstown Imaging, and today we're going to confirm that the Cool Fat Burner can activate brown fat, brown adipose tissue, boost metabolism. We're also going to show that it can activate brown fat even at the highest intensity levels of use. And finally, we're going to show that it can activate brown fat even hours after this Cool Fat Burner session ends. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so for the experimental setup, I'm going to sit in the room for 1 hour. That's 70-degree room. Then I get injected with the FDG radioactive glucose tracer. And then I sit for another hour while that tracer absorbs throughout my system. And then we get the PET scans. Takes like 15-20 minutes. And as we can see, there is no brown fat active, which is what we would expect. 40-year-old male. 70-degree room for a few hours, there would typically not be brown fat active. We do see some glucose uptake into the brain, some accumulation in the bladder, of course, but no brown fat activity. And then what we're going to do is repeat this process, but use the Cool Fat Burner and see if we do get some brown fat activation. And we're going to tweak some of the variables to make it even more interesting. But first, before we get into that, real quick, let me do an overview of exactly how cold thermogenesis with the Cool Fat Burner works to burn calories and fat. So going from the various levels of intensity, from beginner casual up to moderate through hardcore. Beginner casual is basically feel like you're lightly cooled off, as a very easy, extremely low intensity level. Moderate would be sensations of a deeper cold, maybe even rising up to goosebumps. And then hardcore would be pre-shivering up to various levels of shivering. Now the mechanisms of each at each of those levels, casual is largely the function of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous systems. Basically, these are your automatic processes, things like heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and so on. This is a very, very low level of intensity. This is truly casual. So you can do it many, many hours a day, no problem. Now you might say, well, how many calories are you burning? Well, we know through the indirect calorimetry experiment I did last year. If you look at the chart, you can see I'm burning a slow but significant increase in calorie burn. And if you add that up over many hours a day, which again would be so easy to do, you could easily get 1 or 2 pounds of fat loss a month. And remember, the generic average goal is 1 pound of fat loss per week. To try to go more than 1 pound a week, you risk metabolic damage, metabolic slowdown, so forth. So even at casual intensity, you can start to approach that goal. Okay, so let's move up to moderate activity, and this is the level of skeletal muscle uncoupling and brown adipose tissue, or brown fat, the main focus of this study. Both skeletal muscle uncoupling and brown fat work primarily through the function of mitochondria. Mitochondria are the power plants found within all animal cells. They typically combine oxygen and glucose to produce ATP. ATP is involved in movement. However, in the case of cold thermogenesis, there's a molecule called UCP1, or uncoupling protein 1, nicknamed thermogenin, root word thermo for heat. This UCP1 molecule basically takes the place of ATP, keeps ATP from forming. So instead of having movement, you have heat generation in the skeletal muscles for skeletal muscle uncoupling, or heat creation rather, in the brown fat, brown adipose tissue. It might be helpful to think of uncoupling, the uncoupling protein. It may be helpful to think of uncoupling as declutching, or pressing the clutch in a vehicle, revving it up. You burn fuel, but you have no movement. In the same way, with the uncoupling in the skeletal muscle, you burn calories and fat, but you don't move your muscles. You generate heat. So with brown fat, let's do a real quick review on that. There's information all over the site and in the other videos about it. Brown fat, brown adipose tissue, BAT, is related embryologically to muscle tissue. It's why it has such a high number of mitochondria and blood vessels to give it its brown coloration. It's used, well, most mammals have brown adipose tissue, and it really comes to play during hibernation. Animals fatten up to supply themselves fuel over winter, and either periodically through the winter or when they wake up in the spring, their brown fat kicks in, burns off that fat for fuel to generate heat and so forth. Just to be clear, and make sure, you know, if you're new to this, brown fat is good. You want more brown fat. Brown fat does not burn away. As you use the cool fat burner, engage in cold thermogenesis, you create more brown fat. Brown fat burns the regular white fat found in your stomach or hips, the fat that creates cellulite, etc. That fat is burned by brown fat. Brown fat burns blubber and cellulite and all that sort of fat, whatever you want to call it. Human babies actually start with a lot of brown fat because they can't generate heat otherwise, can't shiver and so forth. But over the years, we tend to lose our brown fat, especially in modern society where we have, you know, constant indoor heating. So typically, you have a balancing act between skeletal muscle uncoupling and brown fat in reaction to cold thermogenesis, cool fat burner use. If you're consistent with your cold thermogenesis, slowly build up some cold adaptation, then you increase brown fat tissue. Now let's move up to the hardcore intensity. That is basically pre-shivering up into full all-out shivering. We've already done the indirect calorimetry experiment last summer where I showed just use shiver surfing, not even all-out shivering. Just by using shiver surfing, I was able to triple my metabolism and calorie burn. And that, you know, that's in terms of that 1 pound a week, 500 calories a day. That's easy to hit that just with cool fat burner use alone. That's independent of diet or exercise. Hardcore intensity is also probably where you get the highest level of adiponectin release. Check out the adiponectin video if you like. That adiponectin is involved with increased fat burning, increased muscular mitochondria, all sorts of other health benefits associated with adiponectin. So through casual, moderate, hardcore intensities, there's the conditions and the mechanisms by which the cool fat burner, cold thermogenesis, can help you burn calories and fat. Okay, so let's get to the after PET scans, but first we're going to make a few tweaks and changes and adjustments to give us some even bigger, more important results here. One, I only wore the cool fat burner for roughly an hour, a little over an hour. That's it. Most of these studies, they usually do it 2 or more hours before they test for brown fat. I'm going to show that the cool fat burner can activate brown fat in only an hour. It can actually probably do it in even shorter amount of time. The second aspect, I'm going to go to all-out shivering. There are a lot of, well, so-called experts out there that claim that shivering turns off brown fat. No, it doesn't. And we've known this for years. We've experienced, ever since we've been making the cool fat burner, we've experienced that going all the way to shivering intensity massively can generate or increase heat generation. Even in the old watch me burn 1,000 calories while I'm gaming video, I even comment in there about how even though I was shivering, someone walks in a room and comment about how ridiculously cold it felt. I think it's like 58 or something. And at the time, I laughed out loud because I thought it was really warm in there. So we've experienced for quite some time that shivering can actually activate brown fat. It doesn't turn it off. Shivering is also, it's just been published in the last few weeks that shivering produces the hormone irisin at like 4 to 5 times faster rate than what exercise does. And irisin is involved in the browning of white fat and possibly of increasing your latent brown fat that we're testing here today. And then finally, a third element, tweak, change to this experiment we're going to do. I'm actually going to take off the cool fat burner for a full hour before getting in the PET machine. I've already experienced, and customers have experienced, basically whenever you use the cool fat burner, especially higher intensities, you will experience heightened heat generation for hours and hours after the session. I've had it going frequently 6, 8, 10 or more hours after a session. Do a session in the evening, you'll have trouble sleeping that night unless you crank the AC to max. I've even had one ridiculously long experience of heat generation where I did a hardcore session in the morning, something like 10 in the morning. I was experiencing increased heat all the way till afternoon, evening, night, even that same night trying to sleep. So that's something like 14, 16 hours later, I was still feeling increased heat generation. So anyhow, that's going to be the layout.
1 hour, maybe a little more, maybe an hour 15 minutes of cool fat burner use at hardcore intensity, roughly shiver surfing. Then I'll get the FDG radioactive glucose injection. Then 1 hour at room temp. It actually ended up being like an hour, I think an hour and 20 minutes at 70-degree room temperature. Then get the after scan. So let's check out the results and see what happened. And as you can see, we got massive amounts of BAT, brown fat, active all throughout my trunk, all throughout my torso. You see it in the neck and the subclavicle, around the shoulder blades, around the ribs, the paraspinal, up and down between the spine, the vertebrae, even down around the kidneys. So here's a 40-year-old dude who has a whole lot of brown fat because I use the cool fat burner pretty much on a daily basis. Now the question that might pop the mind here is, well, how many calories then does brown fat burn? Well, first of all, no one knows. They do not know. Second of all, it probably depends, at least in part, how much brown fat you have. Look at me here. How much brown fat do you think I had here? Pretty much none. Now how much do you think I have here around the old eat junk food video? So obviously I have a lot more brown fat there. I'm a lot more metabolically active. I can, I'm burning way more calories every day. There's an interesting study that might kind of shed light on this question of how much real-world weight loss can you get from brown fat activation. They did a study with 3 groups of females. One was a control group, so, just regular women there. Then they had a group of anorexics, and then they had a group of constitutionally lean women. So a control group, a group that suffered from anorexia, and a group that were constitutionally lean, which you could take to mean really, really, really skinny. Those people that seem like they can eat all the time and they don't gain weight. That's the constitutionally lean group. Now, they tested for brown fat activation at room temperature. The control group, none. The anorexic group, none. No brown fat. But the constitutionally lean group, they had active brown fat even at room temperature. Think about that. They walk around 24/7 with active brown fat, and they're constitutionally lean. They can't gain weight even if they try. So that right there probably can help shed some light on just how many calories you can burn with brown fat and the influence brown fat and cold thermogenesis in general can have on weight loss. So to kind of wrap this up, again, 1 hour shiver surfing was all it took to activate brown fat. The brown fat stayed active for well over an hour. That's in a 40-year-old dude who uses the cool fat burner a few hours most days of the week. So yet again, that's another scientific breakthrough confirmation for the cool fat burner and for cold thermogenesis. Until next time.
Brought to you by the Cool Fat Burner, the world's first brown fat weight loss device.